The Knights of the Cross by Henryk Sienkiewicz. Share this video with friends who love books. Chapter 3. At that moment Zbyszko of Bogdaniec approached, thinking it proper to reassure the princess. "Gracious lady, do not be frightened about that. Everybody must risk being killed in a fight, and it is a laudable end for a Laudika, old or young. But war is not new nor strange to this man, because although he is only a youth, he has fought on horseback and on foot, with spear and with axe, with short sword and with long sword, with lance and without. It is a new custom for a knight to vow to a girl whom he sees for the first time, but I do not blame Zbyszko for his promise. He has fought the Germans before. Let him fight them again, and if during that fight a few heads are broken, his glory will increase." "I see that we have to do with a gallant knight," said the princess. Then to Danusia she said, "Take my place as the first person today, only do not laugh because it is not dignified." Danusia sat in the place of the lady. She wanted to be dignified, but her blue eyes were laughing at the kneeling Zbyszko, and she could not help moving her feet from joy. "Give him your gloves," said the princess. Danusia pulled off her gloves and handed them to Zbyszko, who pressed them with great respect to his lips and said, "I will fix them on my helmet, and woe to the one who stretches his hands for them." Then he kissed Danusia's hands and feet and arose. Then his dignity left him, and great joy filled his heart, because from that time the whole court would consider him a mature man. Therefore, shaking Danusia's gloves, he began to shout, half mirthfully, half angrily, "Come, you dog brothers with peacocks' crests, come!" But at that moment the same monk who had been there before entered the inn, and with him 2 superior ones. The servants of the monastery carried willow baskets which contained bottles of wine and some tidbits. The monks greeted the princess and again reproached her because she had not gone directly to the abbey. She explained to them again that having slept during the day, she was traveling at night for coolness. Therefore she did not need any sleep, and as she did not wish to awaken the worthy abbot nor the respectable monks, she preferred to stop in an inn to stretch her limbs. After many courteous words, it was finally agreed that after matins and mass in the morning, the princess with her court would breakfast and rest in the monastery. The affable monks also invited the Mazurs, the 2 noblemen, and Zbyszko of Bogdaniec, who intended to go to the abbey to deposit his wealth acquired in the war and increased by Witold's munificent gift. This treasure was destined to redeem Bogdaniec from his pledge. But the young Zbyszko did not hear the invitation, because he had rushed to his wagon, which was guarded by his servants, to procure better apparel for himself. He ordered his chests carried to a room in the inn, and there he began to dress. At first, he hastily combed his hair and put it in a silk net ornamented with amber beads, and in the front with real pearls. Then he put on a jaka of white silk embroidered with golden griffins. He girded himself with a golden belt from which was hanging a small sword in an ivory scabbard ornamented with gold. Everything was new, shining and unspotted with blood, although it had been taken as booty from a Frisian knight who served with the Knights of the Cross. Then Zbyszko put on beautiful trousers, one part having red and green stripes, the other part yellow and purple, and both ended at the top like a checkered chessboard. After that he put on red shoes with long points. Fresh and handsome he went into the room. In fact, as he stood in the door, his appearance made a great impression. The princess, seeing now what a handsome knight had vowed to Danusia, was still more pleased. Danusia jumped toward him like a gazelle. But either the beauty of the young man or the sounds of admiration from the courtiers caused her to pause before she reached him, drop her eyes suddenly, and blushing and confused, begin to wring her fingers. After her came the others, the princess herself, the courtiers, the ladies-in-waiting, the ribalts, and the monks all wanted to see him. The young Mazovian girls were looking at him as at a rainbow, each regretting that he had not chosen her. The older ones admired the costly dress, and thus a circle of curious ones was formed around him. Zbyszko stood in the center with a boastful smile on his youthful face, and turned himself slightly so that they could see him better. "Who is he?" asked one of the monks. "He is a knight, nephew of that Laudika," answered the princess, pointing to Zbyszko. "He has made a vow to Danusia." The monks did not show any surprise, because such a vow did not bind him to anything. Often vows were made to married women, and among the powerful families where the Eastern custom was known, almost every woman had a knight. If a knight made a vow to a young girl, he did not thus become her fiancée. On the contrary, he usually married another. He was constant to his vow, but did not hope to be wedded to her, but to marry another. The monks were more astonished at Danusia's youth, and even not much at that, because in those times 16-year-old youths used to be castellans. The great Queen Jadwiga herself, when she came from Hungary, was only 15 years old, and 13-year-old girls used to marry. At any rate, at that moment they were more occupied looking at Zbyszko than at Danusia. They also listened to Mako's words, who, proud of his nephew, was telling how the youth came in possession of such beautiful clothes. 1 year and 9 weeks ago, said he, we were invited by the Saxon knights. There was another guest, a certain knight from a far Frisian nation, who lived there on the shores of a sea. With him was his son, who was 3 years older than Zbyszko. Once at a banquet, that son began to taunt Zbyszko because he has neither moustache nor beard. Zbyszko, being quick-tempered, was very angry and immediately seized him by his moustache and pulled out all the hair. On account of that I afterward fought until death or slavery. What do you mean? Asked the Pan of Lugolis. Because the father took his son's part, and I took Zbyszko's part. Therefore we fought, in the presence of the guests, on level ground. The agreement was that the one who conquered should take the wagons, horses, servants, and everything that belonged to the vanquished one. God helped us. We killed those Frises, although with great labor, because they were brave and strong. We took much valuable booty. There were 4 wagons, each one drawn by 2 horses, 4 enormous stallions, 10 servants, and 2 excellent suits of armor which are difficult to find. It is true we broke the helmets in the fight, but the Lord Jesus rewarded us with something else. There was a large chest of costly clothing. Those in which Zbyszko is now dressed we found there also. Now the 2 noblemen from the vicinity of Krakow and all the Mazurs began to look with more respect on both the uncle and the nephew, and the Pan of Dlugolas, called Obuch, said, I see you are terrible fellows, and not lazy. We now believe that this youngster will capture 3 peacocks' crests. Mako laughed, and in his face there really appeared an expression similar to that on the face of a beast of prey. But in the meanwhile, the servants of the monastery had taken the wine and the dainties from the willow baskets, and the servant girls were bringing large dishes full of steaming boiled eggs, surrounded by sausage, from which a strong and savory smell filled the whole room. This sight excited everybody's appetite, and they rushed to the tables. But nobody sat down until the princess was seated at the head of the table. She told Zbyszko and Danusia to sit opposite her, and then she said to Zbyszko, It is right for you both to eat from one dish, but do not step on her feet under the table, nor touch her with your knees, as the other knights do to their ladies, because she is too young. To this he answered, I shall not do it, gracious lady, for 2 or 3 years yet, until the Lord Jesus permits me to accomplish my vow, and then this little berry will be ripe. As for stepping on her feet, even if I would like to do it, I cannot, because they do not touch the floor. True, answered the princess, but it is pleasant to see that you have good manners. Then there was silence, because everybody was busy eating. Zbyszko picked the best pieces of sausage, which he handed to Danusia, or put directly into her mouth. She was glad that such a famous knight served her. After they had emptied the dishes, the servants of the monastery began to pour out the sweet-smelling wine, abundantly for the men, but not much for the ladies. Zbyszko's gallantry was particularly shown when they brought in the nuts which had been sent from the monastery. There were hazelnuts and some very rare nuts imported from afar, called Italians. They all feasted so willingly that after a while there was heard no sound in the whole room but the cracking of shells crushed between the jaws. But Zbyszko did not think only about himself. He preferred to show to the princess and Danusia his knightly strength and abstinence. Therefore he did not put the nuts between his jaws as the others did, but he crushed them between his fingers and handed to Danusia the kernels picked from the shells. He even invented for her an amusement. After having picked out the kernel, He placed his hand near his mouth and, with his powerful blowing, he blew the shells to the ceiling. Danusia laughed so much that the princess, fearing that the young girl would choke, was obliged to ask him to stop the amusement. But perceiving how merry the girl was, she asked her, "Well, Danusia, is it good to have your own knight?" "Oh, very," answered the girl. And then she touched Zbyszko's white silk jaka with her pink finger and asked, "And will he be mine tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, and Sunday, and until death," answered Zbyszko. Supper lasted a long time, because after the nuts, sweet cakes with raisins were served. Some of the courtiers wished to dance, others wished to listen to the ribalts or to Danusia's singing, but she was tired, and having with great confidence put her little head on the knight's shoulder, she fell asleep. "Does she sleep?" asked the princess. "There you have your lady. She is dearer to me while she sleeps than the others are while they dance," answered Zbyszko, sitting motionless so as not to awaken the girl. But she was awakened neither by the ribalt's music nor by the singing. Some of the courtiers stamped, others rattled the dishes in time to the music, but the greater the noise, the better she slept. She awoke only when the roosters, beginning to crow, and the church bell to ring, the company all rushed from the benches, shouting, "To matins! To matins!" "Let us go on foot for God's glory," said the princess. She took the awakened Danusia by the hand and went out first, followed by the whole court. The night was beginning to whiten. In the east one could see a light glare, green at the top, then pink below, and under all a golden red, which extended while one looked at it. It seemed as though the moon was retreating before that glare. The light grew pinker and brighter. Moist with dew, the rested and joyous world was awakening. "God has given us fair weather, but there will be great heat," said the courtiers. "No matter," answered the Pan of Dlugolas. "We will sleep in the abbey, and will reach Krakow toward evening, sure of a feast. There is a feast every day now, and after the confinement and tournaments, there will be still greater ones. We shall see how Danusia's brave knight will acquit himself. They are of oak, those fellows. Did you hear what they said about that fight for 4 knights on each side? Perhaps they will join our court. They are consulting with each other now." In fact, they were talking earnestly with each other. Old Mako was not very much pleased with what had happened. Therefore, while walking in the rear of the retinue, he said to his nephew, "In truth, you don't need it. In some way, I will reach the king, and it may be he will give us something. I would be very glad to get to some castle, or Grodek. Well, we shall see. We will redeem Bogdaniec from our pledge anyhow, because we must hold that which our forefathers held. But how can we get some peasants to work? The land is worth nothing without peasants. Therefore listen to what I am going to tell you. If you make vows or not to anyone you please, still you must go with the Pan of Mielsztyn to Prince Witold against the Tartars. If they proclaim the expedition by the sound of trumpets before the Queen's confinement, then do not wait either for the lying in or for the tournaments. Only go because there will be found some profit. Prince Witold is munificent, as you know, and he knows you. If you acquit yourself well, he will reward you liberally. Above all, if God help you, you will secure many slaves. The Tartars swarm in the world. In case of victory, every knight will capture 70 of them." At this, Mako, being covetous for land and serfs, began to fancy, "If I could only catch 50 peasants and settle them in Bogdaniec, one would be able to clear up quite a piece of forest. You know that nowhere can you get as many as there." But Zbyszko began to twist his head. "Owa, I will bring hostlers from the stables living on horse carrion and not accustomed to working on the land. What use will they be in Bogdaniec? Then I vowed to capture 3 German crests. Where will I find them among the Tartars? You made a vow because you were stupid, but your vow is not worth anything." "But my honor of Wladica and knight, what about that? How was it with Ringala? Ringala poisoned the prince, and the hermit gave me absolution. Then in Teutonic, the abbot will absolve you from this vow also. The abbot is greater than a hermit. I don't want absolution." Mako stopped and asked with evident anger, "Then how will it be? Go to Witold yourself, because I shall not go." "You knave, and who will bow to the king? Don't you pity my bones? Even if a tree should fall on your bones, it would not crush them, and even if I pity you, I will not go to Witold." "What will you do then? will you turn ribalt or falconer at the Mazowiecki court? It's not a bad thing to be a falconer, but if you would rather grumble than to listen to me, then grumble. Where will you go? Don't you care for Bogdaniec? Will you plow with your nails without peasants? Not true. You calculated cleverly about the Tartars. You have forgotten what the Rossini told us, that it is difficult to catch any prisoners among the Tartars, because you cannot reach a Tartar on the steppes. On what will I chase them? On those heavy stallions that we captured from the Germans, do you see? And what booty can I take? Scabby sheepskin coats, but nothing else. How rich then I shall return to Bogdaniec. Then they will call me Comes. Mako was silent because there was a great deal of truth in Zbyszko's words. But after a while he said, "But Prince Witold will reward you. Bah, you know, to one he gives too much, to another nothing. Then tell me, where will you go? To Jurand of Spykow." Mako angrily twisted the belt of his leather jacket and said, "May you become a blind man." "Listen," answered Zbyszko quietly. "I had a talk with Mikolai of Dlugolas, and he said that Jurand is seeking revenge on the Germans for the death of his wife. I will go and help him. In the first place, you said yourself that it was nothing strange for us to fight the Germans because we know them and their ways so well. Secundo, I will thus more easily capture those peacocks' crests. And tertio, you know that peacocks' crests are not worn by knaves. Therefore, if the Lord Jesus will help me to secure the crests, it will also bring booty. Finally, the slaves from those parts are not like the Tartars. If you settle such slaves in a forest, then you will accomplish something." "Man, are you crazy? There is no war at present, and God knows when there will be. How clever you are. The bears make peace with the beekeepers, and they neither spoil the beehives nor eat the honey. Ha! Then it is news to you that although the great armies are not fighting, and although the king and the Grand Master stamp the parchment with their seals, still there is always great disturbance on the frontiers? If some cattle are seized, they burn several villages for one cow's head and besiege the castles. How about capturing peasants and their girls? About merchants on the highways? Remember former times, about which you told me yourself. That Nalench, who captured 40 knights going to join the Knights of the Cross, and kept them in prison until the Grand Master sent him a cart full of Grzywian, did he not do a good business? Jurand of Spykow is doing the same, and on the frontier the work is always ready. For a while they walked along silently. In the meanwhile, it was broad daylight, and the bright rays of the sun lighted up the rocks on which the abbey was built. "God can give good luck in any place," Mako said, finally with a calm voice. "Pray that he may bless you. Sure, all depends on his favor. And think about Bogdaniec, because you cannot persuade me that you go to Jurand of Spykow for the sake of Bogdaniec and not for that duck's beak. Don't speak that way, because it makes me angry. I will see her gladly, and I do not deny it. Have you ever met a prettier girl? What do I care for her beauty? Better marry her when she is grown up. She is the daughter of a mighty Comes." Zbyszko's face brightened with a pleasant smile. "It must be. No other lady, no other wife. When your bones are old, you shall play with the grandchildren born to her and myself." Now Mako smiled also and said, "Grady, Grady, may they be as numerous as hail. When one is old, they are his joy, and after death, his salvation. Jesus, grant us this."
Remember to subscribe.